Hungry I come to you, for I know you satisfy. Oh, I am empty, but I know your love does not run dry. And so I wait for you, and so I wait for you. All right, you sound like you're just waking up here. Let's try something here. All right, I'll sing something, you sing it back, all right? Day-o. That's better. We do this at our rock concerts. It's a way of warming up the voices. Let's try it again. Day-o. That's good. Day-o. All right, leave your inhibitions behind here. It's kind of dark, no one can see you singing. If someone looks over and it seems a little off, just smile at Cyril, he'll take it. Hungry I come to you, for I know you satisfy. And I am empty, but I know your love does not run dry. And so I wait for you, and so I wait for you. I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. Broken, I run to you, for your arms are open wide. And I am weary, but I know your touch restores my life. And so I wait for you, and so I wait for you. I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. Jesus, you're all this heart is living for. Jesus, you're all this heart is living
My name is Pierre, and I just finished 9th grade.
I'm Isaac, and I'm going into 11th grade.
I'm Micah, and I'm going into grade 10.
I'm Nathan, and I'm going into grade 12.
I'm Rosie, and I'm going into grade 10.
I'm Julie, and I'm going into grade 10.
I'm Liam, and I'm going into grade 11.
I'm Sam, and I'm going into grade 11.
I'm Elias, and I'm going into grade 11.
I'm Dante, and I'm going into grade 10.
Here's the question. What did you think Montreal would be like before the trip, before this experience? And how has your opinion changed?
Okay, so before I went to Montreal, I definitely envisioned it being a lot like downtown Toronto, like a lot of buildings, skyscrapers, lots of business everywhere. But where we stayed was more of a place where people live. Yes, I just thought that might have meant something else. I'm dumb. Anyway, so where we stayed, it was a residential area, and I was just overwhelmed by the amount of life everywhere that we went. Like anywhere that we went, there would always be some sort of creativity shown by somebody in like the form of street art, or somebody hanging in plants, potted plants from their windows, or like a garden, because there was a lot of greenery everywhere in Montreal, which helped the whole like alive feeling like be enhanced even more.
This is like not what I expected Montreal to be like, but what I was expecting us to kind of do. And when I first left on the trip, I was like, okay, we're going on this trip to help people, and I'll also get to spend time with my friends. But by the end, I realized I had learned a lot on the trip, as well as I had like made kind of new friends.
Yeah, so my answer's a little different. I've been to Montreal before, but when I've gone to Montreal before, I've mostly just been like with family. So I haven't really like explored around the city. I kind of just have I kind of had a very narrow view of what it was like. So now coming in this trip, it kind of like reinterpreted my view on what Montreal was. It showed me a lot more of the city, which is kind of what Pierce said. Like it's all alive everywhere, and it's not just like buildings and just like businesses and stuff. Like there's a lot of growth happening, whether it's in the plants or you just see people just hanging out. There's people walking everywhere. Like I feel like we should walk more because there's so many people walking.
I didn't have very many expectations at the beginning because the plans were changing so much. Steven wouldn't tell us anything because he didn't want us to be disappointed, and so I didn't really know it was going to happen. When I came back after the trip, I was really glad. I got to learn so much, and I had a lot of fun, and everything was just great, really.
Before we left, I thought it was going to be very difficult to get used to Montreal because I'm from Stratford, a small city, living on a quiet street, driving everywhere, and I knew we were going to be doing a lot of walking, so I thought it was going to be very different from my normal life. But it turned out to be great, and walking's good for you, so that worked out well.
I expected it to be like downtown Toronto. That's what I was going to say. But there was actually a lot more impoverished communities than I expected there to be, and a lot of walking. A lot of walking.
I thought that going to Montreal, we were just going to be kind of doing like a ton of volunteering and then a little bit of hanging out, and it wouldn't be like super like fun and like exciting. But it turned out that even when we were doing the volunteering, it was still fun, and we still got to do like bike rides and Ferris wheels and all that stuff. And even just like gardening was fun. So it was way more like exciting and fun than I thought.
So I had already been to Montreal once before with my family. And on that trip, we only really saw the touristic parts of Montreal, the parts that I thought like they're trying to make tourists feel at home. So everyone speaks English. There's no like problems with any of that stuff. But the places we visited were much less touristic. So I got to see kind of like the other side of Montreal, and I thought that was really cool.
I've been to Montreal a lot before to see family, and so I think something that I learned around this time is that there's a lot of diverse cultures. So every night, Stephen would get us to eat from a restaurant of a different culture. I don't remember the specifics. I know one of them. Yeah, there was empanadas from Argentina. There was Jamaican food. I remember getting the Jamaican soda, and it was very good. And so yeah, it was cool to see all the different diverse cultures. We went to, a couple times, we went to like shops that have imported foods. Nathan got a Squirtle Pokemon soda imported from Japan that is flavored sea salt and cheese, and it's a sparkling soda, and we have yet to drink it. It's just sitting in our fridge as basically a collector's item. And so yeah.
Thanks, everybody. to try to fill in some of the holes on, you're getting snapshots. We tried to stay away from downtown as much as possible. We became really good friends with Michelle, who runs the shelter, soup kitchen, halfway housing, etc., etc. His wife Lynn was the pastor, and they were gracious enough to let us stay at the church. But the community was called Hochelaga Maisonneuve. We were kind of sandwiched between downtown and the biosphere, biodome. That's the word. We went to the Park Extension neighborhood, one of the lowest income, highest rent neighborhoods in Canada. We went to Mile End, to the Village, to wherever St. Jack's Church was with Paul and biking. Biking, we went everywhere. I think we saw everything. So they got to see a lot of diverse communities. The two main topics of the trip was what is homelessness and what is gentrification, a word that we don't use in our daily lives. Does anyone want to try to answer for us what homelessness or what gentrification is?
Gentrification is basically, at least I think, if I'm not mistaken, when somebody buys out a property. Is it? Yeah. So maybe an apartment or something like that, and then hikes up the prices so that people are forced to pay more money to basically rent or stay at their building. And that could really harm a lot of people who don't have loads of money to spend on housing. And so we saw specifically one area, I forget, I'm not really good at remembering things, but the one area where the dude basically did gentrification. He bought out the building and hiked up the prices, and loads of people were kicked out with no place to go. And but luckily they were able to protest against it, and the city actually stopped it from happening.
One thing to add on to gentrification is it's kind of I don't want to say a strategy used, but it can be used where they super hike up the prices in a poorer neighborhood, especially around universities and stuff, so that the poorer people who don't have as much money can't stay in it, and they kick them out further out into the city. So people with a lot of money are able to come into the city and pay the really high prices. So if that strategy is used and they keep on buying more buildings and rich people keep moving in, it can push the poor people out really, in a neighborhood. We saw a neighborhood park where there's a bunch of really more high economy, whatever. And then at the edge, you could see it was a lot more diminishing in terms of how much money people would have. So it's really used to push out people, and especially near universities, because students, they come in for a couple years, and they're normally, if they're coming to Montreal, there's some big universities that can have a lot of money. So around universities, it's really easy to hike up the prices a ton, kick out the people who live there, and then just students come and rotate in. And they can even hike up the prices for the students to come after that. So it's really used a lot, and it can kind of destroy communities by kicking out the people who actually make up that community.
So homelessness isn't just not having a roof over your head, but it's not having a stable house. So sleeping on your friend's couch one day, your parents' bedroom another day, another friend's house, that is also homelessness. So there's many different categories almost, that's a really bad word, of homelessness. And there's different situations. You could just not have anywhere to stay. You could have places to stay one night but not the next. It's very complicated.
Next question, and this is kind of connected. Homelessness, yeah, there's a spectrum of homelessness that exists in the world. Gentrification, do you remember Michelle had a term, harsh gentrification? Upgrades to a city is a good thing, but upgrades that only benefit wealthy people are not a good thing. It's harsh, it restricts people, it restricts growth, it kicks people out like all of you were sharing. What's something that you learned from the trip on homelessness or gentrification?
Something I learned when we were helping out at the shelter was that homelessness is not just like bad decisions that people have made. It could be just bad luck. Like, we had one person who was living a great life, and then all of a sudden, during COVID, they just ended up in the shelter.
This is kind of adding to Dante's story about the building that was bought and the protests about it and stuff. But the guy who bought it, he put in like fast food restaurants and other things that may appeal to like more tourists or like new people moving in. But now that it's empty and the city isn't doing anything because of the protests not wanting that building to be like used like that, those places that the guy built aren't really benefiting anybody. And if you come there at first, you might think, oh, they have restaurants and they have all this stuff, but so it must be benefiting this community, right? But it's actually not good for them because it forced out like a lot of community places and clubs that used to be there. And so I learned that there's more than what you can see with just like at the front, just looking.
One thing I learned about homelessness is about homeless shelters. So at Care Montreal, they said multiple times, nobody sleeps on the street tonight. That was like their motto. And so they will accept and take care of anybody from any situation struggling with homelessness. But we also learned that other shelters won't. They will turn people away. They won't take in everybody, which makes homelessness even more complicated and even harder for people experiencing it. And one thing I learned about gentrification is from the building. One of the leaders pointed out that this is a perfect example of gentrification. And if I had walked down that street before this trip, I wouldn't have thought about it. I just would have seen a Tim Hortons and be like, oh, there's a Tim Hortons, without thinking about the families that were forced out of their homes to build that Tim Hortons. So it can go unnoticed by people that don't really understand it.
Okay, so I think when I first came, I thought of homelessness as kind of a guy on the street who does drugs and is aggressive and isn't very smart. And that has completely changed now. And yeah, like Michel, the guy who was talking to us about a lot of this, was saying how homelessness isn't like a homeless person is not a thing. It's just people who are homeless. And I started to kind of feel guilty and feel bad because I was totally thinking of it the other way and the wrong way. And it's like, just because you're homeless doesn't mean you are like fill in the blank specific thing. It's just that you are homeless because you do not have a home. And I saw at the homeless shelter, like we said, we met lots of people who are really nice people. And if you would see them in like a house, you wouldn't think, oh no, they're a homeless person. They wouldn't. If you see them in a restaurant or something, you wouldn't be like, oh yeah, no, I don't think they have much money or something like that. But like here they are. It just kind of happens. And so it like really this trip helped solidify that homeless is not a specific type of person. It's just homelessness, which is just that a person is homeless. And that doesn't, you don't need to judge somebody because of that.
Do you have a story? Funny story, serious story?
I would say that definitely like top like 3 favorite times we had in Montreal was this time that we went on a bike tour with a guy named Paul. And if it's with a guy named Paul, then it's probably going to be a good time. So Paul took us on a bike tour. We went everywhere in Montreal. We went all around downtown. We went around residential areas. We crossed a big river onto like an artificial island that was created with like dirt left over from like a project. No, the subway building. And I don't know, that was just a really cool time. We biked for like 4 hours and like 40 plus kilometers. It was a long bike ride. But it was great.
This is about the basil seed drink. So, on the second day, we were exploring a Greek neighborhood, maybe, and we went into this random store that we had just wandered upon, and we found these odd basil seed drinks, and they were actually really disgusting. They had like a bunch of sugar in them, and they were like kind of lumpy with the seeds in them. It was really nasty. But Sam really liked them. Like, he became addicted to them. He would like wander around after hours looking for basil seed drinks. And so after many days of looking, searching, unable to find them once again, it was like the last day. And he just like looks across the street, and there is this like little cafe, and inside he sees the basil seed drinks that he spent so many hours looking for. It was so funny. And he comes back, and he'd start drinking them, and then he realized how bad they were.
On our last full day volunteering at CARE, me, Julie, and my dad met this woman named Guylaine, and we talked to her for a while, and she seemed like a pretty normal lady, just a nice lady, and so eventually the subject of cribbage was brought up, and she taught us how to play cribbage for like an hour and a bit, 2 hours. Yeah, it was a couple hours, and we just played cribbage for a while, and it was really weird because considering the circumstances, going to a homeless shelter to volunteer, you wouldn't think you'd make like a friend or that you'd just like get to know them, but we did, and it was kind of a really cool experience because it showed me that not all homeless people are in one stereotype. They can just be normal people.
So playing cribbage with Guylaine was a lot of fun, but we played another game, thanks to Steven's Korean friend. It's called the slap game, and just by that, you know it's going to be good. So he taught us how to play the slap game, and how it works is you essentially slap a table, and this last one to slap the table gets slapped by everybody else. And we played this for hours and hours. Whenever we had a free moment, we would just be like, want to play the slap game? Sure. So that was a lot of fun. And the first time we played, Tammy and a couple other people went looking for a bathroom, I think. And that's when Steven first taught us how to play. So we were playing the slap game, and I was the last one to slap the table. So everybody was slapping me, and then Tammy just walked by. I was like, what is going on? And it was a great memory, and I will teach my children how to play the slap game, and they will teach their children, and it will be great.
Here's a really quick story, and then the reason I'm going to tell it is to give you all a chance to think of your last answer, and this is a question to everybody. What's one piece of advice or a lesson that you learned from the trip that our community out there should know? It's one piece of advice. What's a lesson that you want to leave with our community? While you're thinking about that, here's a really quick story for you. And it's not really a specific story. I promise there's no slapping in it, to my knowledge. But the nature of these experiences is that we don't really know what's going to happen. We have a schedule in mind, but sometimes an organization says, you can't come during that time, or you need to switch your time slot, or we were gardening and it started raining really hard, and that kind of gets in the way. One of those situations, there was an organization called the Wolf Pack Street Patrol. It's an indigenous-led volunteer organization that I believe 2 or 3 times a week walks around the downtown area providing support and medical assistance and supplies and encouragement for people who Cyril, you can correct me later on this, for people who don't feel like a shelter is an option. They would rather be on the street than in a shelter for a lot of reasons. And so this organization says, well, then we're coming to you. And we weren't able to take everybody on that for a lot of reasons. The organization had different restrictions. And so there's this really interesting group that formed. And Pierre, Dante, and Rose, and Cyril joined the Wolfpack Street Patrol for that night. And the reason it was so interesting was they have this niche experience that the rest of the group doesn't have. And the amount of joy on their faces when they met us for a really late night debrief conversation, it was amazing. They were just... this is a positive, don't worry, but you were going on and on and on about this is what they taught me, and this is what Paul said, and this is what Mike was sharing, and we met this person and we did this, and it just felt really special. It felt really sacred to me to listen to that.
Okay, so sometimes just all around the world, I'll go and I'll see just like a rundown house and somebody who just doesn't look like they have a whole lot of money, doing whatever, maybe not great clothing, whatever. And I'll see it and I'll be kind of judgmental and like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't do that. And I think this trip kind of changed me, because now I'll look at them and see that like at least they have a home, they have somewhere to stay, and like that even though they might not have a whole lot of money in their home, that like that is something that is still a privilege, and I shouldn't be judgmental on them just because they might not have the fanciest or most expensive home. But that's also not to say that people at the homeless shelter are worse than them, because like we said, we saw lots of people who like I think really deserve a home, and they just don't have the chance, the ability to make money to do it. So yeah, I guess it's changed me that no matter how like small or poor it may be, that as long as somebody has a home, that's something.
Okay, I don't really know what to say, but I'll kind of go off what Dante said. I think that this trip kind of helped me to also like not judge people. Like I guess, yeah, sometimes if I'd see like near the beginning of the trip, I guess, if I would see like a homeless person sitting in the street, in my head I would kind of be judgmental, which isn't a good thing, but it did sometimes happen. But then as we met, like when we were helping in the homeless shelter, I met homeless people. I got to talk with them and hear their stories. A lot of them are very interesting, and a lot of people you wouldn't expect to be homeless. Homelessness kind of comes in all forms. Not all homeless people are like wearing really old, like destroyed clothes and things like that. Sometimes they're wearing like normal things and you would never notice that they're homeless from seeing them around town. So it's tough because it's hard to know when people are homeless. So I think if you're judging someone who definitely looks homeless, it's not fair to them, because there's other people that you wouldn't judge that are homeless. So it's not like everybody's different, I guess. I don't really know what I'm saying, but yeah, don't judge people based on what they look like.
I would have to say it's kind of obvious, but just like be kind to everyone, because when we would go to like Care Montreal, everyone was just so nice to all of us, and it made us feel like really accepted, and it's kind of like we fit in. And the people at the shelter were nice to us, or like staying at the shelter were nice to us, and we tried to be nice to them. I think we did a good job of that, and everyone just kind of became kind of like friends. We just kind of all, I don't know, we all felt accepted. So yeah, just be nice.
Mine would be don't be too quick to judge, you have no idea what someone's situation is or what they've been going through or what they have gone through. I don't know about you guys, but I met a lot of great people at the shelter, and some people who have gone through some like serious stuff, and just don't be too quick to judge.
The first day we were there, Michelle told us that nobody is safe from homelessness and that it can happen to anyone. It is more likely to happen to some than others, but it can happen to anyone. And as the week went on, I met a lot of people who reinforced that idea. Like when we were playing cribbage with Gilan, she was super smart, super kind, very funny, and she had all these skills. And yet she was at a homeless shelter, which just reinforced the lesson that nobody is safe from homelessness. And talking to everybody there, they all had such complicated stories, and like they didn't think they'd be there, and nobody does. And yeah, so it can happen to anybody at any time.
Mine would probably be keep an open mind, because usually there's something going on that you don't know about or that you just can't see. And if you did know about it, your perspective would probably change, and you might feel bad about how you thought earlier if you hadn't kept an open mind.
So mine is also a simple message like everybody else, but a little different perspective is one thing I learned is that you can always help people, which sounds very simple, but like Steven said, the wolf pack thing, they're going around and helping people who've kind of made the decision that not exactly they didn't want to be helped, but they didn't want to go to someone and ask, please help me, or go to a shelter and all this stuff. But people would still come, still give them resources and things. And Care Montreal was started by a small group in a church, just wanted to get people off the streets. And then it started ballooning, and now it's got multiple sites over Montreal. And through the people there that we met were all really nice, the people who were staying there and the people who were working there. And I would always just kind of think they chose to do this with their lives. They chose to just help people and just commit their lives. Well, I don't know about their whole life, but commit at least part of their life to being selfless. And even if the person doesn't want to be helped, or even if you're not sure how you can help, there's always a way to help other people. And there's always a group to join or a thing you can do, kind of like Care Montreal that we saw. There's so many people just being completely selfless.
My thing that I kind of noticed was be flexible and be kind of open to new ideas. As Steven said, when we realized that not all of us would be able to go on the wolf pack street patrol, thank you, we kind of adjusted and just chose something new to do as a group. And when I first saw Care, I was like, wow, that's kind of sketchy, kind of run down. But then I was like, that's what we're here for. And I don't know, maybe keeping an open mind would help me interact more with the people.
Something our caretaker, Michelle, said to us midway through the week has really stuck with me. He was talking about, the nature of generosity. So if you are giving something to someone, say money to a homeless person, they are not obligated to do whatever you want them to do with the money. So, and you are not obligated to tell them what to do. Generosity is just that. You give something to someone and they are free to do what they will with it. But something Michelle said was, even if they do use that money to go buy drugs or alcohol, you're still helping them and other people, since they don't have to get that money through other means, through violence or other ways to get their money to buy the drugs. And I just thought that was very interesting to think about.
My advice or impression is that just because somebody is homeless, it doesn't mean that they're less than a normal human being. When we were at the homeless shelter, we were running the soup kitchen. We got to see everybody going by, and like one of you said, people wearing normal looking clothes, somewhere, and if I passed them on the street, I would never have guessed that they were homeless or living in a homeless shelter. So when I was on the Wolfpack gang with Dante and Rose, we got to give out things to people on the street, and I found it epic and awesome that people, like the leaders of the Wolfpack, like knew these people and were just like engaging in conversation and like talking to them, updating each other on their lives, because just because they're homeless doesn't mean that they don't have, like, they're not living a life. It also means they have their ups and downs. And they're just normal people experiencing something different.
I just want to add, I was also there at the Wolfpack Street Patrol, and it was a very surreal experience for me. And it was kind of late at night, and we had a cart full of stuff that we were giving out, and we didn't go up to anybody. People came to us and asked, hey, can I have that? Can I have this? Do you have this? Sometimes they gave away clothes, sometimes not. And the stuff we had went out pretty quickly, or it feel like it did, because the night went by pretty fast. And it was just an amazing experience for me. We were talking a whole lot. We were talking about like roller coaster rides one time, and then like a second later we were talking about like issues of homelessness and gentrification and all that, and it was a really good experience for me.
Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me.